Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. And today we are thinking about the father's loss, ladies and gentlemen. This is a thinker and something that we need to think about. So, luckily, here I have Jeff here who's going to be helping us think about this in a whole new light. So, with that being said,
Mhm.
thank you so much, Jeff, for sharing your time, your perspective. Oh, I am so excited for this. So, let's just dive right in. When you hear the words, a father's loss, what does that make you think about?
For me personally, I'll be straight up. I'm not an expert in the field. I don't have any like educational background in this subject. But what I can bring to this perspective is that unfortunately I have walked through this twice.
Mm,
We lost two of our sons, both at 19 weeks and then 20 weeks respectively. And um, for me, it's honestly like it's a hard thing to wrestle with because every story is different, but every story matters. And
yes.
something that I've personally found in trying to give a lot of hope to other fathers of loss is that it doesn't matter how old your baby was when you lost the baby, like that's still your child. You're still a father, you're still a parent. And I feel like that's something that has been really, really hard for a lot of people that I know personally because they'll say like, "Oh, well, your baby was born at 20 weeks and you lost them, but we only had like a 8 week year old, so it doesn't really count." And it's like, well, it does count. Like that's still your kid and it's still your
Exactly.
child. And it's so when I hear loss, and especially from a father's perspective, um, I think of every child is a child. Every loss is significant, um, and something that I've had to wrestle with and really work through is there's not a lot of resources for fathers out there, um, and that was really hard for me because I I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm not shy to share my emotions. And one of the biggest things that a lot of people told me especially when we lost our first son, Davian, um, they were like, "Well, you gotta be strong for your wife. You gotta show up. You gotta provide for your family." And it felt like I didn't have time or space to truly grieve.
Yeah.
Um, and that was really hard.
Yeah.
And after the second, or during our second pregnancy and our second loss, I almost gave myself permission to take a step back and be like, you know what? I'm going to grieve and I'm going
Mm,
to like really put this out there and just like sit with this because it's really hard to care for my wife fully and care for our family if I can't fully process what we have walked through twice. Um, and so that's why I wrote this book. That's why I chose to write a book, because that's how I express myself, and that's how I was able to walk through my loss. But that's what I would say is that fathers they deserve to grieve as well, and it's okay.
oh, absolutely. And I love this. I love your statement because I don't think anybody realized that once you become a parent, it doesn't matter if your child is 1 week old or 100 years old, you still are a parent.
Yeah.
And no one can disqualify you and no one can diminish your loss just because it doesn't have value in their eyes. That's them. That's
Yep.
on you. If you don't
Absolutely.
see value of what I've been through, well, then that's a personal problem that you can take with and go do whatever you want to do with. But for me, it has value. And I think
Absolutely.
that's one thing that I hate in this world is that they feel like they have the right to devalue somebody else's experience because they don't have the educational experience or the time or whatever excuse people want to label it as to deny someone's opinion or their experience as any value at all, but your value matters. What you've been
Hmm.
through matters. And I love the fact that you were honest about how there's no there's no resources for men.
Yeah.
There's no group, there's no nothing for a man to just feel their emotions because unfortunately there's this toxic masculinity about, oh, men aren't allowed to cry, men aren't allowed to grieve, men aren't allowed to be feeling. There's supposed to be a wall, and they're supposed to be sturdy, and they're supposed to be this and that and that. And I'm like, it's
Yeah.
unrealistic. They're
Yeah.
human beings.
Yeah.
They have emotions, they have feelings just like a woman does, just like anybody else in this world. If you're a human being and you have a heart, then your emotions matter, your
Right.
experiences matter. And I love that you wrote it in a book and you decide to just share your process, share everything that you went through, because it just shows that, you know what, one person out there can see value in this. One person out there I can help. And if I can help that one person realize that they're not alone and they don't have to go through this alone, then at least I did my part, because I think more
Absolutely.
people need to have that type of mentality when they realize their experiences have value. Because I've had people who want to come onto my show, but then they do their research and they see all these people, there's experts and doctors and lawyers and all these people, and it's like it doesn't matter. If you
Yeah.
find value in what you have to say and your passion, then that has value. Take it. Go with it, run with it, because that has value to somebody else to just shift their perspective, to think
Absolutely.
in a different way. And you were talking about grief and how your grieving process, you allowed yourself to grieve with your second child versus your first child. And I want to know, like, is there a wrong way to grieve?
I feel like the 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 worst thing that you can do for yourself if you're walking and not even just in child loss, like that's just my experience. Any
Yeah.
kind of loss. The worst thing you can do for yourself is say that it didn't happen or avoid it. That is honestly, it's not helpful, and it's going to something that my wife. There's a book that my wife read after our first loss. I think it was called "The Body Keeps the Score" or something like that. And I feel like those words are really true. Like it doesn't matter if you try and brush it under the rug or if you try and run away from it, like eventually that trauma and that grief is going to manifest itself. And it might not be in a positive way. It might not be in a healthy way. And that I feel like that's a bad way about going about dealing with your grief and dealing with loss is because it's important to address these things on a level of your own capacity, but also being real with yourself and saying like, okay, this is how much I can handle today, and then I'll come back to it. But
Yeah.
just completely putting it off, that's not helpful for you in the long run.
Oh,
And
absolutely. It's denial.
yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say is like it can look in any different way. Like some people go to therapy. Some people write. Some people write music. Some people like there's no wrong way necessarily to approach your grief as long as you're doing it.
Yeah.
Um, and or any kind of trauma, to be honest. And I mean, obviously, there's probably methods that work better for some people over others. For me, it was I went to therapy for a little bit, um, and it was helpful, but I just felt like I just needed to do something. I'm a doer,
Mm.
and I had to like figure something out. And I remember after our first loss specifically, I was like, I want to write something for in honor of our son Davian. And they actually gave at the hospital, they gave us like a little dinosaur, a weighted dinosaur. And we nicknamed him Dino Dave, and yeah, um, so it was exactly his weight. And so for his celebration of life, his funeral, I wrote a poem for him, just expressing like how much we loved him and how much we missed him. And then I was like, I should write a children's book about Dino Dave, and I was like, I didn't get around to it because like some stuff was coming up, and then with our second son, with Jaden. Um, After we lost him, I sat down with my wife and I was like, I I didn't write something the first time. And this time I feel like I need to write something, but it's not just even a tribute to our boys. Like I want to write something that's going to be a resource for other fathers.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wrote the book that I did. Um, and I'm a fiction writer. I'm not a nonfiction writer at all. So I did what I did, like I know, and I decided to write a book that was fictionally based, but
Yeah.
based in truth. So it's a
Yeah.
fictional story based in truth, and that's what I wanted to do. And like that's what I found to be therapeutic for me, more than therapy. Like it was helpful to get the ball rolling, but once I wrote the book, that's when I really felt like, okay, I'm really processing through both losses now, and I'm able
Yeah.
to show up for my wife and my family. So,
Well, that's a beautiful way you put it because it just shows that your dedication to your family, you know what I
mm,
mean? Your dedication to your son, your dedication to the love that was first implemented with your wife, you know what I mean? It just
hmm
continues on. I mean, because usually I hear all the time that like after a child's loss that the couple usually doesn't stay together, you know what I
hmm
mean? Was that difficult for you? Was that ever a process for you and your wife? Did it
yeah.
ever come into your mind, or was it like, no, we are going to stick this through? I mean, how was it for you?
Especially after our first loss. Our pastor. So we identify as Christians. We were very active in the church that we were in when we lived in Nebraska, and our senior pastor. His daughter also experienced the loss. So he personally never did, but he knew like the trauma that his daughter went through, and her and her husband really struggled in their marriage for a long time. And he just sat down with us and he was just like, I don't know personally, but I can tell you that when a couple goes through a loss, it's a
Yeah.
razor edge. It's either it's going to completely shatter and you're going to drift apart, or you're going to fall on the side of if you make it through this, you will become resilient and you'll be able
Yeah.
to accomplish anything and face anything head on together. And when he told us that, that was really, really hard to hear that because we had been struggling a lot. There was
Mm,
no intimacy. There was no there was no joy. It was just like we were going through the motions for a
yeah.
long time.
Yeah.
And then we moved to North Carolina where we are now, and we were still in that rut. We were in that rut for probably a year and a half after our
Mm,
first loss. And then there was I just remember there was a moment where we had um, an opportunity to just be like real with ourselves and say, do we want to keep living like this, or are we going to say this happened to us, but it didn't break us and it made us stronger and we're going to move forward. And we chose to do that. And that doesn't
mm,
always happen, but for
mm.
us, that's what we chose because we we wanted to keep moving forward and we
Yeah.
wanted to stay together, even though it was really hard. So when we had our second loss, um, it was crazy because like the similarities between the first and the second one, the boys were a week apart in their due date. They were both, like I said, they're both losses at 19 and a half to 20 weeks. Both of them happened to be losses right around my birthday, which really, really sucked, if I'm being
Yeah.
completely honest. So my birthday's a
Yeah.
little tainted. It's hard. It's gotten better over the years, but it's still hard to celebrate my birthday. Um,
Absolutely.
but with our second loss specifically, like we chose to be there for one another and we chose to really show up. And I honestly feel like had we not gone through what we did with Davian and chose to stick together and chose to walk forward, that we probably wouldn't have made it. Um, and it was a conscious decision between both of us of being really real of like, do we want to continue or would it just be easier to just wash our hands and walk away? And I'm so
Yeah.
glad that we didn't walk away
Yeah. I
because
mean,
we
sometimes
wouldn't be
it's
where we are right now, you
I
know?
know you wouldn't have made this book, you wouldn't have helped anybody else. I mean, you wouldn't
Yeah.
have your baby girl. I mean,
Yeah.
things would have been so much different. So I'm really
Yeah.
glad that you guys really sat down and really reflected on it and like
hmm
really ask yourself like, goodness, what I mean, sometimes we have to ask ourselves, what is this moment? You know what I mean? What does this really mean? And how can it really identify who I am as a person?
Yeah.
And I think it really just shows that, God is in your life. God is in your
hmm
heart. God is in your relationship. Because if he wasn't, you guys would have taken the easy way out. And the
Yep.
easy way out
100%.
is not God's way. You know what I mean? So
Yep. 100%.
You guys chose that stronghold, and you chose to write this book, and you chose to share your story.
Hmm.
And shame on anybody who thinks that just because your children were only 20 weeks, 19 to 20 weeks, and they devalue you. I mean, shame on them, because you
Hmm.
hold value. Because as soon as you find out that you are pregnant, you know what I mean? There's this bond that's created. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
100%.
There's this bond that's created between the father and the child, and then the mother and the child. I mean, people don't realize that man's sperm holds so much emotions
Yeah.
and so much like of the father, that when it goes, you know what I mean, when you develop a baby, that child literally is 50%. It takes two to tango, people. It takes two to tango. We don't need to talk about the all of that, but I'm just
Yeah,
saying it's
yeah.
there. So it's like
Yeah.
nobody can devalue what a father's has to say when it comes to a child, because what you've been through still matters. I mean, I can only imagine what your wife went through. Oh my goodness. My heart goes out to her for being a strong, resilient woman, for even standing by your side and still believing in you and supporting you, even to even write this book. You know what I mean? Because,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh my goodness, I couldn't even imagine. But it's like, this is something that I wish people would understand. And I have to ask you, do you think there would have been a better way, or that somebody could have helped you during your grieving process? Or do you think the way that you grieved was already a great a way that was beneficial to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Something that I feel like would have been very helpful was, and I'm gonna start at the beginning and I'll work my way backward for this, but I want to bring in our situation right now. So we just were blessed with a baby girl.
Mm.
Um, and
It's okay to get emotional.
yeah,
It's okay.
unfortunately, that's not the case for everybody.
Yeah.
Um, After loss, it's not guaranteed. And even if you're a person of faith, if you're not, like it doesn't matter. Any walk of life, it it genuinely like hurts my heart when people desire to have children
Mm.
and either struggle with infertility or
Mm.
loss or
Mm.
just they can't get to that point.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact that our daughter is was a product of divine intervention. Like it is like
Love.
it was not from us at all. Um,
Mhm.
and we were it's a blessing, and I will
Yeah.
never take that for granted. But I also have to hold on the other hand that that's not everybody's story, and that's so hard to sit with
Exactly.
that. And
Oh, it
so,
is.
yeah, and to answer your question, so I wanted to say that because something that would have been really helpful when we were walking through what we were walking through is I don't know, I don't know if everybody's ever experienced this, if they've ever been pregnant or had a loss or anything like that. Sometimes the best things that people can do is just not saying anything and just sitting with you. And one of the biggest things that I found was not helpful is comments such as like, at least they, at least you could get pregnant, or at least they passed quickly, or at least they didn't suffer, and stuff like that. And I know it's well-meaning, but it is not helpful. Never ever helpful. And if I could say like to anybody that's listening and they want to sit with some or they want to approach this subject, um, I would just honestly approach it with grace and just say like, I know that's hard. And
Yeah.
I don't know what you're experiencing, but let me sit with you. And I'm just
Yeah.
here. And honestly, sometimes just sitting in silence and not saying anything is more than enough because we don't want words. We want our kids back.
Yeah, you want to be able to be there. You want to be able to have the experiences that other parents are still lucky to have.
Yep.
So for that to be gone, any words is kind of dismissive at this point. Yeah.
Yep.
To
Exactly.
just sit there and just acknowledge, because it's like one thing that was told to me is that no one is actually relatable to anybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because everything is so subjective, everything is so personal. So it's like how you deal with your grief, how you deal with your pain is always going to be different for somebody else. So to say, "Oh, at least they died quickly," like how dare you? You don't
Yeah.
know. You don't know.
Exactly.
You don't know how that how they experienced their death. You don't know. I am now dealing with the aftermath of the death. So it's like it is a different situation for everybody, and I think that's a great way to leave people to really think about this when they're dealing with somebody who comes across this, is just to reflect and just sit there in silence and just value their time, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because we don't
Yeah.
know what's going on in somebody's mind.
Yeah,
But if you just
exactly.
bring them into just this state of calm and just be that calmness, that station, you know what I mean? Of just calm, at least they can come to you, not say anything, but just sit with you in silence. Being able to sit with somebody in silence is everything. Because if you know how to sit with somebody in silence, then I feel like you can do absolutely anything, because
Yeah.
people don't know, people don't like awkward silence, you know what I mean? But I'm the type of person that, like, I love silence. So if you want to come into my house and sit down and just look at the ceiling, I'm fine with
Yeah, for sure,
it.
for sure.
You know, but what I wanted to say was that when you were talking about your experience and everything that in that manner, my question is, do you think this experience is going to be able to help you down the line if you come across anybody else who has gone through this?
Oh, 100%. Like that's why I wrote the book, honestly. I wrote Holding On to the Light because I wanted to give a resource where there was none. And just kind of like a broad overview of kind of what is talked about in the book is I actually asked three families that we know personally to share their stories of loss. And they're all different. So the first one was um, unexplained infertility that ended up leading to adoption and just the loss of never being a biological father or
Yeah.
biological parents, and just
Yes.
dealing with that. The second one, dealing with IVF and
Mm.
the struggle with not only getting pregnant through IVF, but also like the weight
The
of
cost.
the cost, but also the is it natural? Is it unnatural? Is it by God's design? Is it not? And just really wrestling with that. And like, what is family going to think? Like, are they going to look down on us because that's not tradition? And then the third
Mm.
one is a couple that we know that unfortunately lost their son to trisomy 18. And that's something that's not really talked about. It's just like a chromosomal um, defect that he was. It wasn't a matter of if he was going to pass away. It was a matter of when. And just
Mm.
having to carry a baby and just knowing that it it's a ticking time down to when
Yeah.
he's going to pass. And that was so hard. And had I not gone out and like asked these people their stories or even experienced what I've had, I wouldn't know how to broach those topics with them. I wouldn't know how
Yeah.
to approach them. But now that I have the experience that I do and just being willing to say like I know we don't share the same story. I know I didn't share every kind of loss in this book, but tell me your story. I want to hear from you what you walked through and how you either are still in that rut or how you've come on the other side. And like, I want to know your story. So I think to answer your question, it has really helped me to ask those critical questions while also being mindful of
Yeah.
not overstepping.
Yeah.
And I try to through the main character's brashness, um, I I basically approach the topic of like he says things that are very, very unhelpful, and then the characters that he's having conversations with correct him and show him like this is how I would rather you ask the question.
I
And
love that. See, I
yeah,
love
so
that. I love that how in your book it's a fiction, but you also have truth into it, because I was
hmm
talking to another author and he was like, that's what people don't realize, that fiction is actually truth, but we
yeah.
have to add a little extra razzle dazzle
Yeah,
into
yeah,
it
yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
make it more understandable and pleasing to people's ears and pleasing to people's eyes because people can't really handle the raw truth of what life is or what people are actually going through. So the fact that you put in your story not just your story, but other
Hmm.
people's stories along with it, it truly does provide people's context into the grieving process in all its different stages because we don't see it that way. We see, oh, he's 17 years old, he died. Oh my goodness, bad thing. You know what I mean? I can't
Yeah.
believe I'm so sorry for the father, blah, blah, blah. But that's all they care about. You know what I mean? They don't
Yeah.
care about your situation. They don't care about the other men who went through the infertility and knowing that they can never be a father, that burden, oh my goodness, of mothers knowing that they can never bear children. I mean, though that weighs heavy on a human because human beings we hold so much of our identity of what labels us to be of who we are, and as soon as we find out that label or that identity isn't a part of us, then it's like, who are we? And
Yeah.
then it's like we have to remember, it's like we are who God says we are. We are still good, we are still lovable, we can still show mercy and still represent God in all that we do, even if it doesn't make sense to the world. The world isn't supposed to have sense of it, but God's children do. So when you interact with other people of faith, they will accept it. And if people who don't have the faith, but they still read your book, they'll get this enlightenment that they may need, that they
Yeah.
never knew that they needed before, you know?
Yep.
I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it
Yeah.
sucks that time is catching up to us. Ah, I hate the time. What could be some lasting words of wisdom that you can leave us off with to keep on thinking?
Yeah, honestly, just kind of circling back to what I said at the beginning, like everybody's story is important, and it doesn't matter what kind of loss it is. Mine just so happens to be um, fathers of loss. That's what's near and dear to my heart, but that every single loss is important to talk about and to unpack and to it's okay to unpack it, especially as a man. And it's okay to say, I'm not okay. Um, and like I said, sometimes the best thing you can do, especially with men, is just sit in silence with them because that's all they need. They just need somebody to just know that they're not okay. And
Yeah.
and that's something that I've felt through our journey and what I've seen through other men of this in the same situation. So,
Well, I believe it because my husband, he's a manly man, and with him, he has literally helped me retrain myself in the way that I deal with him and other men because it's like sometimes it's like I can't approach a man how I would approach a woman or a child, you know what I mean? I have to approach them differently. So, yes, silence is a virtue and just giving them that acknowledgement. That just acknowledge I understand you have feelings. I understand you're going through something. I may not understand why or when or all the little
mhm.
tiny details, but I understand that you emotions matter. And I think
Yep,
that's what women need to start acknowledging of men is like their emotions matter. If you can care for a dog and their emotions and make them all pretty and everything like that, then why can't you care for a human being, a man who's in
yep,
front of you, who's pouring out their heart, or even not even pouring out their heart, just sitting there in silence and just marinating everything in their mind? They just have to just, they will process it their own way, but it just be there. You know what I mean?
yep,
Just
yep,
be there is just like
yep.
something that we need to start realizing and just thinking about just being
Hmm.
there for somebody that's still processing everything in their own manner. It's
Yeah.
okay.
And
It's
maybe
okay.
and maybe honestly to kickstart that is to give the men permission. Just to say
Yes.
like it's okay. Like you have
Yeah,
permission to feel what you do and your feelings are welcome. The
exactly.
last thing I'm gonna say is I had a person reach out to me after they read the book and she said that her and her husband recently had a loss back in December 2024. And she said that her husband read my book and she was like, I was appalled because he hasn't read a book in over a decade. And and that this was the first book where he really felt seen by somebody.
God
And,
bless you. It's okay
and
to cry.
that
You could
yeah,
cry
I
in my
know, I
show.
know,
It's
I
okay.
know. I'm trying to keep it in, but like honestly, that to me was everything. That was why I wrote this book.
Exactly.
Even if it
It's
was
that
just to help
freedom.
that one guy, like that's all that mattered. And I hope that it continues to impact people, and I know it is, but like that's why I wrote it was so
Oh,
that people could experience that freedom to feel. So,
absolutely. See, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. We need to think about grief in a different way. We need to think about our emotions in a different way. We need to think about our mental state in a different way. And for all you men out there, you matter. Your emotions matter. Your mindset matters. And you have value. No matter what anybody says, you still have value. So hold that value and do whatever that you need to do to express, retreat, whatever it is. It's okay. But just find that safe space. And you know what? Please go check out his book. I have a link to access his book. If you're listening on audio, it's right there in under the description. You'll find the link to his book. If you're on YouTube, right there, it's in the description. Find it right there. And if you're on my website, just find his photo, click on it, and it goes directly to his book so that you can continue on thinking about this matter and read and just see what it means to you, because that's the whole
mhm.
point is to keep on thinking. So with that being said, bye.